Welcome back to the Après Business Podcast. Join your host, Rebecca Babicz, founder of Fall Line Digital, as we dive deeper than ever into conversations with the founders, marketers, and innovators shaping the outdoors. Let's jump into today's episode.
You've brought it up a few times, how you're using AI, cloud cowork. Sounds like you've built out some agents, some automated reporting. I'm so curious because you actually did mention to me, I was like, how did you find out about the podcast? You're like, oh, I ran some AI and you were emailing, following up. Like, I don't know if that was you, robot, but I was like, hey, actually, we should connect. That would be a really fun podcast. And you were like, oh, I set up AI to do that. Which I think that's super interesting. And it's the here and the now. I was not even going to say like it's where the world is heading. It is the here and the now.
It's here,
So I'm super curious, multiple questions in one is like, what's your process for learning this? Do you just fail forward? Do you start with a problem? Do you just jam on this thing and figure it out? Did you take any courses? And then two, like, I'm just super curious, like you as an entrepreneur, have you thought differently about your role in the last 6 months, 6 months versus, you've been doing this for 14 plus years. Is your job completely changed? And like where your focus with AI and AI co-working, is what got you here going to be what gets you to the next place? Or is there some sort of AI integration that you're just constantly thinking about in your head is like, how do we integrate this? How do we integrate this? How do we future proof? So multiple questions in one, but
So I'm ready for the chip. I saw like there's some sort of like it's like a retainer you can put in your mouth.
Where's your AI glasses? Come on.
I know. That's what I'm ready for next. So with AI, I was a little bit late to the fold with using it. I don't know, maybe not, but it seems like everybody was talking about ChatGPT, and I went straight to Grok. That's what I started with, and I love Grok. Like, she is awesome. I love just like, I'll drive down the road. I was reading a book on God, of all things. It was one of our customers. He was like, you need to read this book. And I was like, all right, I'll read it. And so I listened to it, and I listened to it driving to Kansas and back. And it was really neat. I learned an incredible amount about just religion in general. But I grew up a country kid, and we didn't go to church much. So to me, it was something where I had this whole new learning experience. And this is where AI is phenomenal, because I was able to just be like, all right, Grok, walk me through what these apostles are again. Because, you ask people that they went to like a Bible school their whole life, and yet they still can't answer basic questions. That's one thing I always find. It's like my kids in Spanish class. Like I asked my son this week, I'm like, all right, you're about done with Spanish for the year. What can you tell me in Spanish? He's like, nothing, Dad. We don't learn anything about Spanish. I'm like, why do you go to school then? I mean, I don't understand. But I think it's the same thing with many people that seems to have gone to religious schools. But moral of the story is, Grok was a fascinating tool for me, and really is what opened my eyes of like, wow, this is some insane knowledge, because you can dig so deep into, you pick the topic. Like, I'd be driving down the road and I'm like, hey, I've been looking, what are the apostles? But then also, I just bought a Yamaha TW200 motorcycle, and I've never adjusted the valves. Grok, can you walk me through how to adjust the valves on a TW200? And she's like, oh yeah, no problem. You just take an 8mm wrench and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is awesome. So anyway, bringing it full center. I love Grok. I love Google Gemini, ChatGPT, but I found that they were all just like, you define the problem and you're going to get an answer. And it wasn't usually with depth. And once Claude Cowork came out, that's when, it was like the world opened up to me. It was the greatest change in technology that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And if you're not using Claude Cowork, you need to be, because it can make you an absolute machine. I hope it will replace me at some point, or at least a lot of pieces of me, because it can make all of our jobs more efficient. I don't know where it's going to go long term. It might wipe us all out. That's a problem. But for now, I'm just going to roll with it because it's here. But so for me, to be able to, like, let's use some examples. So I have, as I mentioned earlier, I have an agent that is set to run every Monday at 5 a.m. and it drives on my computer. It opens up Amazon, logs into my Amazon PPC account, and it dives into what we have an extremely complex PPC campaign and a giant PPC campaign and a pay-per-click, advertising campaign. And so to triangulate all the things in there, it's just too much. It's just way too much. And I put my hands up. I'm like, I don't know. I got nothing. It's just, I don't like how complicated it is. My Amazon guy, that's what he believes we need to do. So I'm like, whatever. But where I like Claude's smart enough to go in there and chip away at it and come back and give you an executive summary and say, hey, you need to pause these 236 keywords and change this, the X, Y, Z, and whatever. These are flagging great. You should ramp budget here, reduce budget here. It gives me the executive summary that I need to be able to make actionable decisions. Or most importantly, I send it right to my Amazon guy. And I was like, hey, Tio, according to Claude, we have some problems that we need to address. And then we have some wins that we need to, double down on. And again, he may push back on me, but without that, I'm not going to take the 10 hours that it would have taken to do that. Now, I'll tell you another example. So one of my clients that I work for, I'm running Facebook and Google ad campaigns for him, and we have a variety of things from instant lead forms, and we also have landing pages and a few different contact forms. And with running a complete account analysis, it's really cool because Claude, I just say, hey, Claude, I want you to go and give me a complete analysis on X, Y, and Z accounts. And here's what I'm looking for. Spell out this whole digital dashboard. And I was able to design an 8-page incredible marketing document to give a proper assessment on what campaigns were working, where the leads were coming from that were accurate, any problems, of course, with lead management, what we're doing in email campaigns, what the open rates were, what the trends are. It was able to spell all that out. I was able to define the problem, which is how I laid everything out. And then it was able to get me the results of how the efficacy of the campaigns were in a matter of like 5 minutes, which was absolutely staggering. For me to generate a report that would be as adequate as it would have taken me a day or so just in formatting, even if I was smart enough to pull the data like it did. And it is just so cool because I'm able to say, hey, I like that, but I want to change from this metric to this metric on that data point, and then triangulate that to these over here. Can you see a correlation? And it allows me to do things that I don't even know how to do. And then I'll even tell them like, hey, I'm not exactly sure how to set this up in Google Tag Manager because again, Google is a crazy ecosystem, and I sometimes struggle to get the dang back end to work right with tracking conversion goals and whatnot. And so I have it even once a week running through all of my accounts to check for errors because these things happen too. Linking gets broken. Doesn't matter what the platform is, just there's always some new change. Meta's ripe with it. If anybody's ran Meta ads, you'll know what I mean, where there's times where I'm like, I've done everything per what Meta wants and this ad won't serve. And I don't know why. Meta doesn't either. Like I have account reps there and I'll call them. They're like, I don't know, Josh, you might just have to redo all that. I'm like, that sucks because that was a lot of work just to build this out. But now it's not too bad because I'm like, hey, Claude, Meta's acting up again on that ad 7. Can you go and delete ad 7 and just rebuild that campaign from scratch? Like, yeah, no problem. She goes over there and kicks it for like 30 minutes. And I'm sitting there watching my computer do all kinds of stuff. I'm like, this is awesome. I could sit here and freaking, I don't know, drink a beer, play my guitar, then go for a run and come back. And it's going to be done. Or it's going to come back with questions. So there's so many aspects that are like that can make it better. And then I'll give a third example is with my web developer. We on Orange Mud's transition wrap collection page, I've hated it forever. I hate the collection pages for that matter in Shopify. I don't like how their headers are organized or lack thereof. And I couldn't communicate clearly what was in my brain to my web developer. But I was like, hey, I don't need the web developer to do this. But I do like having a web developer to do things because Claude's not perfect. And so, yes. And so I was like, hey, Claude, here's what I want to achieve in this collection page. Here's my objective and here's a sub objective. And I want you to lay all this out. in HTML. So I can just send it and I'll send the link to my developer. And I did. So I got everything working like I wanted it. It built out the pages for me. I told it things I wanted changed. And then I just sent the link to my developer and he rolled it all out for me. Normally, like most people, I at least am talented in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. I could lay out a whole plan or Figma or whatever. Most people are not. And so imagine, say if you don't know anything about Photoshop, Illustrator, Figma, Canva, whatever, and you're trying to get your web developer to do X, Y, and Z, you're going to sketch it out with a pencil and paper is probably the best case scenario. You can replace that problem with an exact solution that you could actually upload HTML and solve the problem yourself. But again, to be safe and not ruin your website, still probably better to have somebody for now cross-check it and be able to share that message. So that's yet again another example of a non, not necessarily something you have to run in cowork, but there's still some perks to doing that to be able to communicate a more clear message.
Oh my gosh, this is so fun. I have not gone deep on this podcast with anybody on AI yet, and I have so many thoughts. One is, what parts of AI do you feel are overhyped, right? Like, because you just talked about multiple different use cases that you're using AI. And I think right now it's like Claude Cowork has like all this hype machine, just like everything that you ever imagined you could do, you need to do it. And yet I do feel like, I don't know the conversation that happened with your Amazon manager or whatever, but
yeah,
I've seen sloppy AI reports come back, right? You give it the right inputs, but then, as somebody, we'll take him, for example, me as example, my media buyer, my CSM, for example, are like, no, that's just like, that's cute, but like that's so far off from what's actually happening. Like there's either missing context or something like that. AI amplifies good and bad ideas, right? It's extremely overconfident, or I won't even say overconfident. It's extremely confident in its delivery, right? So us humans were like, well, Claude said that, or ChatGPT said that, and they were really convincing when they told me that, so I'm going to believe it, right? Because that's just how we interact with it. And so I guess for me, my question is like, how do you differentiate like that you're amplifying good ideas versus bad ideas?
Sure.
And what to trust? And when do you still kind of like trust your Amazon, like you said, your Amazon manager, the one who's in the accounts, who has the experience, and also your web developer, the one who's in there is actually making the changes versus like, well, AI said this and it's hyped up, like,
sure,
so we're just gonna go with AI, because I feel like that's like the inflection point right now, right?
Yeah. No, and you have to be careful. And so I have found Claude to be the most consistent platform that knows, at least in a lot of my spaces, it knows what's up. And now, is it perfect? No. It is definitely. It's funny. There's times where I'm like, "Are you sure, Claude? You said you set up this linking. Like some of this. I mean, some of this stuff is really complex, right? I mean, like I said, this Google's back end is crazy, and that's probably the main spot that I've had some problems where it's like, this conversion goal isn't set up right, and I look at it, I'm like, I think you actually set it up wrong, and then Claude's like, you know what, my bad, sorry about that, you're right, I didn't do that right. But it's still better than Google searching something of the past, right? Where you have to consult 27 different YouTube videos and try to deduct something. So it may not be perfect. And sometimes what I find, especially, some of my projects, it'll run for 4 or 5 hours by itself, unattended. And I'm just sitting there, should I watch everything? Yeah. But most things are like, it's slower for now. It's slower than me going and click. It will it has a cross check. Okay, we opened up this screen. I'm taking a screenshot. I'm reading the data. Okay, I need to execute this click. Okay, I'm going to click this drop down and then I'm going to execute. So it goes through and you see it. It shows you the actions. And so there's a reason why it's a little bit slower. So I don't completely not pay attention to it, but it's something that I know there's objectives that I need to accomplish that if I did it would take me all day, and I can have Claude do it. It may take it a couple hours. But I can always cross check it. And so it still comes down to define the problem. And ultimately, if you define the problem, you have a solution. It's like most problems in life. That's all you got to do. If you define the problem, most people never do. People just complain, this doesn't work and whatever. And I have a zero tolerance to that. I just don't listen to people complain. It's something that forever, I guess, I've been in charge for a long time in my career, and you get tired of that. And historically, I was like, okay, what's the problem? I'll fix it. But I just hit a point. I'm like, no, I'm always the fix it guy. I'm not going to do that. I'll just tell people, just define the problem. You spell it out, and then use Claude or Gemini, use whatever you want. You try to fix it. If you can't, then let me know. And it makes it easier, but it's really, it's even refined my decision-making process with, I don't approach any AI platform with, how do I do X? I hardly ever do that. It's a very rare situation. Normally it is, here is the problem. Here is what I need to achieve. How do I achieve that? You want to spell out those variables, and you can go down this rabbit hole of going on, say, X and reading, Claude cheat codes. And I've done it. And all those people, they're a bunch of clickbaiters. It drives me crazy. You see this, like, type Claude and favorite my posts, and I'll send you this book. And I've done it. And then I never get it. I'm like, damn it, I was actually curious about that. So I just hit a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to define the problem. I'm going to spell out what my result is that I want to have, and then I'm going to have it work with me to get there. And we're going to test it. If it doesn't work, then we're going to do it again. And I will cross-check other platforms every once in a while. But I found Grok to be a conversational, interesting piece if you want to dive into the history of dinosaurs in Texas, random things like that. But when it comes to like the business aspect, man, Claude's pretty cool. I even have it driving my Banana Pro account and creating ad copy, because it defines the problem. It defines the image that I want to achieve, and then via text, and then it has Banana Pro create it for me, and then it has me cross-check it, and then it runs with it. I mean, it's really fascinating. But I think, as with anything, I wouldn't use it to, like do something real reckless. But most of mine is refining analytics and how to spend money and hopefully get a return on advertising spend, and things that are only going to cost me money if it doesn't work. But ultimately, I put in metrics to be able to cross-check it and ensure, like, okay, my source of truth is my true ROI. Like with Orange Mud's PPC, for example, with Google and Meta, I use server-side analytics via True ROAS. So I have server-side attribution to everything, and I use incremental attribution just because of Apple device fall off, and to get a little more accurate, kind of finger in the air catching which way the wind's blowing, to measure attribution. And so I tell it, Meta lies. Do not trust Meta's data under no exception. Do you even make a single? Don't even tell me their data. I don't care. Because Meta lies, because they count view-through conversions. And to me, view-through conversions is useful for brands like Coca-Cola. If you want to, spend $1 trillion on a Super Bowl commercial, and you're like, well, we sold 2% more Coca-Cola this month, then okay, that's view-through, and that's fine. I don't care about that. That will, in my opinion, bankrupt the brand. So I care about server-side attribution and ensuring that I'm getting a proper return on ad spend. And so it makes its decisions once a week on my Meta account and Google account. If I was actually spending money on Google right now, it makes those decisions of saying, hey, Josh, based upon what we see, you need to kill ad 6 and 4, but ramp up 7 and 8. And let's make a lookalike audience, because that specific audience segment in Texas, California, Florida is doing really well, and we want to do another one. So there's a lot of pieces that are pretty easy to validate. You can go cross-check backwards to, like, say, my server-side attribution software. Or if I wanted to get real wild and frisky, I'll go to Facebook and just hope for the best that their sexy platform is actually doing like what it says. But yeah, I think it's getting better. I know ChatGPT seems to hallucinate and kind of go a little off the rails, and Gemini, which I do like, I have found it often didn't quite give me the right answers, but But as you said, I had a deal. Well, like I said, I've been trying to get in my Google ad account, and according to Google Tech Support, they told me I need to put this tag on in my root domain. And I punched it into Claude, and Claude's like, don't do it. I won't even do this for you. That is 100% a phishing email. And I was like, really? I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's the case number. I mean, I've been hacked before, or my factory was actually, and which tricked me on a $69,000 wire fraud. And so I am a little cautious with phishing emails and masking an email address. But I was like, man, I don't know. I keep pushing back on the tech support. They keep telling me I need to do this. And Claude's like, no, do not do it. I will not do this for you. You do not want to do this. And I'm like, I'm going over into my hosting domain. I'm adding this text file and I screenshot. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, are you sure Google's not right on this? And Claude continually said no. But then I ran it through Grok, and Grok's like, yeah, that's standard protocol. And I was like, oh, well, shit. Now, is Grok right? Standard protocol, that's what Google says. According to Claude, I'm exposing myself to further risk of my account being further hacked. And who do you believe? And if I could get my Google Ads account manager on the phone, I would at least be able to say yay or nay, but she's often delicate to get a hold of. So yeah, there's no perfect answer yet, to be honest. But I can say that 98% of the time, man, it's better than any other resource that I've ever had. That's what I can say.
Well, and I love what you said about starting with the problem, right?
Mhm.
Because that's like the new skill set, is like actually being able to unpack what the problem is that you're trying to solve it, and then
Yeah,
adding the nuance, the context, and not burning time, but making sure that you get that right output so that it makes sense to, what
it
you're
is.
trying to achieve. And so I've been thinking about this a lot in the future of the world that we live in. Is like, I do believe that it is going to be agents and humans working together. I don't think
Mhm.
that agents are going to replace humans. I think that there's going to be just these little assistants that we latch on to the work that we're doing, and we're adding those decision frameworks, the context, the nuance that actually gives you the right output.
Sure.
And so I've been also thinking about like the places in which AI can't currently solve, and where AI can't solve. And one, I
Mhm.
think, is distribution. AI can jam you 500 different hooks for all of your organic Instagram posts, but it's not going to
Mhm.
be able to give you an audience. So distribution is like one where I just think AI currently cannot give you more distribution. You have to work on your own distribution channels, whether that's networking, podcasting, building up your own organic following, paying, things like that, right? Um,
Sure.
so that's one. And then the other two that I have been mulling on are just like judgment and taste. Is
Mhm.
again an example of 500 hooks for your next Facebook ad campaign. Cool. Like, that's
Yeah.
great. Like, thanks so much. This is like virtually useless unless I can actually analyze it as a human and be like, that's tasteful, that will work. That nano banana,
Yeah.
ad that you created is actually really interesting to my audience, or it's just slop, right? So I don't know, when I think about the future of the world, there's probably other places I haven't fully developed that thought, but those are the
I
few
don't
where
know.
yeah,
I think that there
distribution.
is. I think the more that I work with AI, the more I realize that it's programming us to learn how to work with it rather than the other way around. And I'm always joking with my kids. I'm like, we might live in a simulation. But here's the deal: when you work with AI and you work in PPC as much as specifically in a digital world that we in e-commerce have been working in for so many years now, you start to realize that we each have our own computer programming. Call it what you want, but that's essentially what it is, right? And so if right now I needed um, to target somebody, like my father-in-law, I was explaining this to him last week. I was like, Poppy, I'm like, if I wanted to target a retired golfer that loves Mercedes and, living on a golf course in an immaculate lawn, I'm like, it wouldn't be that hard to target you. It really is staggering how, Italian food and all these things, and Stella beer, all these things, when you start drilling down this path of what is your target audience, that's one thing. But how many of us really know that? Like, how many of us genuinely know the breakdown of our audience? And what Meta can tell you and what Google can tell you is an incredible amount about those people. Are we, as marketers, smart enough to dive into this giant mass of data? Like, can I look at the giant mass of data that I've accumulated over 14 years about our audience, customer base, that buys, say, at even different seasons of the year, and conclusively say that they are 60% trail runners and 40% cyclists, or they're 60-40 male female, demographics based, region based? I mean, am I smart enough to make a monthly marketing plan based upon all the data that I have that's been existing for 14 years? And the answer is no, it's too much. That's the answer. It's too deep. But I can go into Claude and I can have it analyze this data and cross-reference it between Amazon PPC results, Google Meta results, Google Analytics, organic traffic, email traffic, postcard traffic, and get an understanding of who each of those audiences are and how they relate differently depending on time of year and or month. It could be like maybe when it's absolute the hottest, people switch to our white pack as opposed to the black packs. But yet maybe in the early summer and back into summer, maybe there's a higher proportion of black packs sold compared to the white packs, the dark versus light in that sense. There's just a lot of weird things that you can start spotting to make those incremental gains and adjustments in a marketing strategy that AI is going to be able to do better. But again, does that mean it's going to wipe us out? No, but it means we need to think smarter about how we ask the questions. And like my kids, for example, in school, my son got in trouble the other day because he got a 0 on an assignment, and he's a really smart kid, but he got a 0 on an assignment because the teacher has some software that figured out that he used AI for part of the assignment. And so first off, I told him, I was like, if you paste that in a text file, you'll erase that code, right? Before you go paste it into your document when you copy from ChatGPT or whatever you're using. But I was like, that's the first problem, dumbass. I don't know why you weren't thinking of that, because I know he's really sharp. And but the other part of that is, I think it's ridiculous that the teachers don't like the use of AI in schools. Like our school is like 0, and just it should be none. And we even had one of the teachers call and made my son tell us in the middle of the day that he had been using AI in an assignment recently. And so we're sitting there listening. We're like, okay, I mean, is this bad? I'm not really sure. We didn't even know how to answer. And I looked at my wife. I'm like, you're going to have to answer that because I'm not going to say things nicely here. But you can tell that there's a giant breakdown in the current education system with the understanding of AI and why I want my kids using it. I've told them, like, I don't care what the school says. I'm not saying cheat. I'm not saying, you need to do your work, right? But you need to use it to be smarter. And there's no reason that anybody should be turning in half-assed schoolwork anymore, because you write your content genuinely. Otherwise, you're going to hurt yourself long-term. But you can get past them brain blocks that you used to have. And then you can, of course, refine it. And let's make it better. Let's make it something awesome that we may have in the past not really had those tools. Well, we didn't in the past have those tools for it. And so I think the more we use it, the more it's going to open up our own capabilities to be smarter rather than just stealing from our jobs in what we're doing. It really is going to be a complement. Again, until it's completely autonomous and we aren't needed. But I genuinely believe this is a tool that is going to grow an incredible amount of jobs for a long period of time. It's just, unfortunately, there's like media management, for example. It'll be interesting to see how that aspect changes, because once we have it to where it's automated, it can just churn content. all day long and micro make adjustments, which normally, you know how it is. Like now you set a Facebook ad campaign and you let it run for 2 weeks before you do anything, or, you know, you want it to spend X amount or hit these various different metrics before you make a change. That will be autonomous before too long. There's already some tools out there. I've tried them, they suck so far, but they're coming. And I mean, shit, I really feel like I'm close to getting Claude to do that already. It's not quite there, but there's a lot of that type of stuff that's going to change. But then where will that put people in the media side? You know, we're going to shift into, we need to shape the direction, and let's put the trajectory on what we're going to do, and put the rails in here with what we need to, guardrails with where we need the min and max to be, and then let's let it do the job and refine it. So, you know, it's scary, but, you know, the way I see it, like I said, even like with Farad, I'm like, whatever. They're probably going to come take everything that I have at some point. But you know what? For now, I'm just going to enjoy it. It's going to be fun.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to bring this conversation so full circle, and you're going to appreciate the hell out of this. But
Yeah.
we can all just go mow lawns, right? Go out and touch
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. You know what? I mean, the AI-driven robots, when Elon rolls them out, and we got Optimus Prime out there mowing the lawn, we're going to wipe out the lawn industry. But then same thing. Somebody's got to man the ship on the front end, you know, to have the human interaction, maybe. And you know, no, at least until they decide to totally cut us out. And then yeah, they were just in deep crap, I guess, from there.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up with some fun rapid fire questions. That
All right.
was a super fun conversation. I have not been able to go that deep on the pod with anybody, or really anybody in real life either. So that was super fun. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's bring it back to some fun, quick questions. Go outside activity when you actually have free time. Favorite one?
Riding my bike, always. I love gravel biking. I love mountain bike. Mountain biking is my greatest happy place. I always tell people, like, I could go out on a bike ride and I could come back and you'd be like, hey, somebody just burned down your house. I'm like, that sucks, but you know, I can get a new one.
You gotta come to Utah. You gotta come to Moab.
I am. I'm coming to Moab in the first week of June. I'm doing a 2-week long trip, and we're starting with Unbound Gravel in Kansas, and then my son and I are driving to Moab. We're actually going to camp in Colorado a little bit in the mountains, and then we're going to go to Moab. I've got some buddies of mine coming in, and we're going to do the White Rim. We're going to do one day of warm up on Slick Rock, and then we're going to break the White Rim into 2 days, and I like the first week of June, and I can't wait. So that's 100-mile mountain bike trail, one of the most iconic out there, obviously, in the world. So
cool.
So that, and then we're going to whitewater raft and go hiking and goofing off and work our way back to Texas via Colorado to Mexico.
Well, there you go. Oh my gosh, yeah, I did the White Rim, but we did it in like 4 days. But I always thought if I could do it in one day, that would be such a cool bucket list goal, to just do it in one day. Although you wouldn't be able to stop so much and like look around and like look into the little caves and go on your little side quests and things like that. But I was like, man, that would be a bucket list, because then you don't need to get a reservation, right?
Shuttle or anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where, so initially, that's what we were going to do. We were going to do it in a single day. And my buddy Jack and I were planning this initially. And then I was like, well, shoot, I'm going to invite my buddy Tim and my buddy Brian and I'm going to bring my son. This is going to be fun. And then I thought, it would be nice to go have beers and have air conditioning at night and burgers. And so, yeah, so that's why I was like, well, we're going to have plenty of cars there. How about we shuttle? So we're going to have a shuttle is what we're going to do. And that way we can go back to the Airbnb and chill out and celebrate the day, and then wake up the next day and go conquer it again until we're done. But yeah, normally I would be a guy to go do it in a day. That was the initial thought. But my friend Jack and I, we've done about 100 adventure races together and a lot of mountain bike races, and we both like doing really stupid, epic things. But the older I get, the more I want to just enjoy things and not just race and miss the views and, you know, miss the animals and everything else you might see in route. So yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be epic.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. Hardest endurance race you've ever completed?
You know, I've done a lot of endurance races, and I guess I would say probably just by sheer soreness of my butt. I raced 720 miles across South Dakota on my bicycle, and I rode the whole state. And man, I tell you what, after about 350, 400 miles, somewhere in there, I was like, man, I was intimately aware of where every seam was in my chamois. And man, that was just uncomfortable. Between knee and my butt sitting on that freaking seat for 4 days, a little over like 4.5 days. Yeah, it was 720 miles from gravel bike, incredible amount of mud and rain. I about got sucked up by a tornado. My dead dog lady, she'd been dead for years. She ran in front of me for like 3 or 4 hours on the fourth day, which was just bizarre and the coolest experience. I was like riding down the road crying. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm like, lady, what are you doing? She's sitting there running with her tongue hanging out. It was the coolest experience ever. But yeah, that was a long time. And in one motion. In adventure racing, I've had a lot of really hard ones, but there it's multiple sports. So you get sick of one, and then, like, you get sick of biking, you switch to running, you switch to kayak, you switch to rock climbing, whatever. And it mixes it up. But just to be in that one static position for such a long period of time, and knowing you're riding 20 to 22 hours a day was a lot.
I love it. What's the most important thing that your kids have taught you recently?
Um, you know, there's a lot of things there. I think ultimately it's about happiness. You know, I guess in two parts. So both of my kids play an incredible amount of soccer, and they both play club ball and school ball. And so, like, right now we're on day like 10 straight of soccer. I mean, it's last weekend was divide and conquer different cities with the kids, and in Houston, San Antonio. Yet we live in Austin, and then this weekend it's, in theory, hopefully this rain will actually not have soccer this weekend, but we have games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this weekend. And so they're really committed to the sport, and they are learning endurance, and they just don't know it. And it's neat to see at 13 and 14 years old how, they just get up and they're just doing their job, right? Their job is go to soccer practice before school, go to soccer practice after school. We've got games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's just a lot. But they for the most part continue to do that with a smile on their face. And I think sometimes, we as adults, we get into this routine of work and just balancing family life, and you sometimes forget that it is a job. Both sides of that are a job, but you have to learn that you still need to play and have a good time. And so what I see with my kids is that in soccer, there's play and there's good time. Of course, I see them smile, I see them laugh on the soccer field, but I see them both now saying, Dad, I kind of like to do, here we have all these other hobbies, right? We bike, we run, we hike, we fish, we kayak, we hunt, and do all this stuff. And they love to do all these other things. And they're both saying, like, we want to do other things. Like, we've been playing soccer since we were 5. and I'm starting to realize that I, just like them, I need to spend more time playing, and they need to as well. And as much as I pushed for the longest period of time, like, hey, you guys are working your way up the chain. You've made incredible strides in the sport. You're at a high rank in the teams. This should be a direction towards college. I'm also at a point where I'm like, they got 4 or 5 years left with me before they're gone, off in college or whatever. So I need to spend that time, and they need to spend some time enjoying and having fun downtime. So yeah, I would say they taught me that, we all need to spend more time focusing on playing and enjoying life rather than working in the cog of soccer or work or whatever it may be.
I love that. All right. Well, this is the Après Business Podcast. We always end with the same question. I have made multiple guests cry with this question, so be forewarned.
Yeah.
What's your proudest moment? What makes it all worth it?
So, I would say, I mean, as a, dad, your kids are the coolest thing, and they really are. and I have had some wild ones where, I mean, you know, search and rescue has been deployed and we all survived and stuff like that. So some of them are pretty proud moments, but I would say one of the coolest was, well, no, I will go down that path. So this was with my son. We had, and it's a whole different podcast. It's a long story, but the moral of the story is our boat blew off a bank. I swam after it. Storm hit while I was swimming. Ended up swimming for 3 or 4 hours. They thought I died. I thought they may have died coming after me. I wasn't really sure. Search and rescue got deployed. We had over 70 people on the ground, human tracking dogs. National Guard was deployed to stay in the cove looking for them. And, you know, we each had our own journeys. My buddy Jay and my son, you know, they had their own journey when they were 10, or when he was 10, and my buddy was 67 at the time, I think. And, you know, they had their own journey trying to go get help to, you know, whatever. I mean, they thought I was dead, but they still had to get help. And then I, of course, am like search and rescue mode and helping with, you know, search and rescue and ultimately, you know, long story short, I ended up finding them the next day. But I was the one that went and got the boat, and I somehow triangulated him via just how I knew he would go based upon these cell phone towers, and I found them. Well, the coolest part about that was that like when I went up to him, my buddy Jay was like, "You're dead." I'm like, "No, I'm very much alive." You know, I mean, I had a wild night. I'm guessing you guys did too. But he's like, no, we saw you go down. And I'm like, no, I mean, the waves were big, but, you know, thank God I knew how to do the backflow because I had to take a break there a few times. And you probably maybe saw that. But, and my son, he was like, Dad, I gave you a 40-60 chance. I'm like, you give me a 40-60 chance? I've done some of the craziest crap on the planet. You gave me a 40-60 chance, dude. and he was like, well, I mean, I didn't figure you would drown, but you know, we thought we saw you drowned. And I'm like, oh, shit. And of course, it was one of the most, you know, craziest moments ever. But to see that the adversity, to know what he must have been going through his head at 10 years old, thinking he watched his dad die, was just crazy to envision. And I felt just sick about that aspect, that he even had to think that. Because I knew when I figured out, well, I didn't know that they were gone initially. I literally thought they could have swam after me, and they wouldn't have made it. The swim was way too big because I had to swim clear across this lake and for hours. But once I found them and you know, talked to him, I was worried about how that may impact him, you know, psychologically. I mean, 10 years old, you think you saw your dad die. You had to spend a freaking night wandering through the freaking Mexican Texas border, you know, where the cartel's deep, rattlesnakes are everywhere. It's freaking summer, it's hot as hell, and they've got nothing, no phone, no lights. You know, they had Crocs on, walking for like 12 miles, 14 miles across the desert in the dark. And he was just like, man, Dad, that was cool. Like I have an adventure now that's, you know, awesome like you. Because I've told him so many adventures that I've had over the years, and that was, you know, one of his first takes from that. He's like, well, at least I now have a cool adventure like yours. So I was, you know, insanely proud to see how he held up under something that most adults would really struggle with. And I mean, they spent the night out in the bush, and you know, like I said, I found them the next day. But yeah, that was probably the coolest, you know, most proud moment, and of course happy because we all lived, which was something I wasn't sure about. Like when I called my wife at 3 a.m, I said, hey, you know, I'm sure they're fine, but here's what happened. And we have human tracking dogs come in, and then the human tracking dogs couldn't get a scent. And then, you know, I was like, well, how good are these dogs? Do they like track like raccoons normally? And they're like, no, these are out of the Laredo. They're the best around. And, you know, so that's when it was kind of a breakdown moment where we're like, he actually may be dead. Like that was an insane thing. But, you know, again, you know, we both, you know, recovered from it and have since continued to do crazy things, obviously with a little more, I'll never swim after a boat that blows offshore again. I will say that. But yeah, so that was probably the most proud that I've had.
Well, that does sound like a podcast in its own. You have to get
it's
you
its own
on
animal.
I Survived podcast. Those are fascinating. Well,
yeah.
Thank you so much, Josh, for being on the show, sharing your insight. I know that your journey of owning multiple businesses successfully are going to inspire others. I love how you're using AI. I love how you're still prioritizing playing and having fun and being an amazing dad. So congrats to you, and I can't wait to see your future success.
Yeah, likewise. Keep kicking butt.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes.